Today on The State of Us, should children work and Americans lose faith in college? Welcome to The State of Us. I'm your host, Justin T. Weller, joined today by the one and only, your friendly redneck liberal and the senior resident historian here at True Chat, Mr. Lance Jackson. Today, we're looking at how a little work never hurt anyone, including teenagers, according to an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal. And we'll also talk about how more Americans now say that college isn't worth the cost. So we could talk about those separately, but I think, Lance, right, the approach we're going to take is kind of talking about how these go hand in hand. Because if we allow younger people to work, how does that impact their education? Is it a positive impact, negative impact? How is the older workforce impacted by children working? Now, the labor force participation rate for teenagers has been falling for more than 40 years, and the decline in the past 2 decades has been especially sharp. In 1978, the labor force participation among 16 to 19-year-olds was nearly 60%.
That's me.
Yes.
That's when I was that age.
And 20 years, so forever ago, back in the Stone Age, and 20 years later, it was still above 50%. Today, though, it's only 37%, even while job openings are as plentiful as they have ever been. So what are the reasons for this?
Well, that's what I want to know.
There's a couple, according to the opinion piece, right? I mean, what's the reason? Well, there's some opinion. One reason fewer young people work is minimum wage laws can make them too expensive to hire, an economic reality that proponents play down or simply ignore. So I guess what he's contending here, right, Lance, is that because you have to pay where you didn't always have to do that, because you have to pay somebody, say a 14-year-old, the same as you might have to pay a 19-year-old, because we talked about the inverse of this before the show. It can actually have the effect of, well, but wait a minute. If this job is going to pay $15 an hour no matter what, do I want the person that has 4 years of work experience who's applied, or do I want the person with no work experience that's applied? Well, if I have to pay them the same, I'd much rather have the person that has the experience. So forget this person that I have to pay who doesn't deserve the pay, who doesn't, quote unquote, deserve the pay. I mean, that's his argument, right?
I see that, and I think it happens, but I also know that all of the businesses that I go to now have way raised their prices. I mean, prices are through the roof. So, okay, they maybe have to pay a little bit more for labor, but the last time I looked at the stock market, Wendy's, McDonald's, none of them are their parent companies. They're not losing money. And they say the reason we're making profit is because we raised our prices.
Well, and the other side of that, right, is from the business perspective, can I afford to? Well, if I pay a living wage, then I raise prices, but then people complain about the increase in prices.
But on behalf of teenagers, because I'm appalled at only 37% of them working, I think that's horrible. But why would I work if I can't make enough money to do anything? Because I know when I worked as a teenager, I could pay my car insurance. I could take my girlfriend out on a date. I could, and pay for it. I could save a little bit of money to go to school. All right. That's not the case anymore, even at minimum wage. And I think that's something that older people forget, because I was one that forgot until I had younger people pointing out the disparity, of my $3.35 an hour would be the equivalent of almost $20+ an hour. Minimum wage is nowhere around $18 to $20 an hour.
And we talked about that.
But but not in a long time.
Yeah.
And I hear people my age, well, these young people, they just want too much. Well, the $3.35, if you're old like me, 78, in 1978, you were between
back in the dark
16
ages.
and 19, minimum wage was $3.35 an hour. Our spending power was the equivalent to at least $18 an hour today. So our minimum wage job gave us the buying power of somebody making $18 an hour today.
Which would make it a lot more enticing.
And that's not there. Exactly. Then more young people and more people might want to enter the workforce. And you say, well, but then prices would go up. Comparatively, yes. But again, back in 1978, people weren't eating 3 meals a day out because the cost compared to their wages were so high, it was cheaper to eat at home and make your meals. And we've gotten away from that in this age of 20 years of the minimum wage not changing, not keeping up with inflation. And so now all of a sudden we expect these meals to be made by people who make no money and we don't have to pay any price or the convenience of it, right?
Or the convenience of it. I mean, you're going to walk up the street to the gas station and pay, $3 or $4 for your Monster and get your bag of chips. And you just spent, $7 or $8. And it's like, well, it's only $7 or $8. And it's like, okay, but what could you have made at home for $7 or $8? The issue, though, has also become that comparison, because we've moved toward, a society where you can eat out more and there is more fast food available, fast, convenient food available. The price between the two is also becoming less. In other words, what you save by going to the grocery versus what you actually pay to eat out. We've talked about that before, which is why in areas with high poverty rates, we've also seen that's where fast food restaurants love to be, right? Places with high poverty. 2 reasons. 1, because those people are more likely to eat there. And why? It's convenient. But the other thing is, a lot of times it's as cheap as buying the fresh food and making it yourself. It didn't start that way. It started as a maneuver to prey on poor people who didn't have the financial knowledge to know that, well, it's only $5 or $6. Right. But if it's $5 or $6 every day and there's 30 days in a month, and if you would only spent $3 or $4 a meal, how much every month and how much every year would you have saved and been able to work toward getting something better? Well, nobody ever taught them that, so they don't know. So big corporation comes in and says, well, this is a great place to have fast food because it's convenient and it looks
but it's also that convenience. It's that soccer mom and dad who pull through the drive-through after practice.
Yep, we don't have time.
And rather than throwing it in a crock pot or making it and warming it up in a microwave, well, we'll just go through the fast food lines because, I was of a time there weren't the fast food line. Well, but you had to go into, you may want to get your meal to go.
Yeah.
But you had to go into the
now you can sit in your car.
Restaurant and get it. Right.
The other thing is, I don't know if this is a problem some other place, but I'd like our listeners to let us know. Email podcast@thestateofus.org. Fast food in our town is a myth. There's like 1 or maybe 2 places that I know of that I would use the word fast to describe the service that you get.
But they don't want you to go through the line in your car anymore, nor do they want you to go into the restaurant because there's a board there. So you have to place your order yourself. They don't even hire anybody to take your order. What they want is for you to download the app on your phone, order it ahead of time, and then they will have it ready for you, taking away all human interaction. So now we get by with
human cost
and human cost because now there's nobody to greet you when you walk in the store. Nobody has to answer you as you go through the drive-through. Nobody has to place your order or take your money. All they have to do is hire enough people to make the food, put the bags out on the little cart, and then you just grab your bag and off you go. And you never have to interact with a human being.
Hey, I meant to tell you, I went into McDonald's for the first time like a week or 2 weeks ago. Since they put in there, there is no more cashier deal thing. Hated it, but I did it.
I won't.
I know.
I will stand there till somebody waits on me.
If I bet they love that, don't they?
If I go in.
Really? See, you're affecting the bottom line. You're the reason inflation's happening.
Is it? Okay.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Well, I'm paying the price. I want service.
The old grouch sitting there.
Yeah, I want service, okay? I'm paying for service.
Well, and see, then what they're trying to do, right, is they're trying to remove paying for service.
No, they're trying to, exactly. They want to lower prices by giving you no service. It's like when I go through Walmart or Kroger's and I scan my own items, I keep looking for somebody to hand me a check. If I'm doing their job, if I have to scan my own products and pay for it myself, I should earn the money that the cashiers earn because I'm saving them money.
And they're trying to redefine their customers' relationships. And what they know is if they teach like members of Gen Z, well, they're growing up in a world where there is no cashier inside of McDonald's anymore.
No, they don't even pull their credit card or debit card out. They just show their phone to the screen.
And they would never wait in line for the cashier. They just go to the self-checkout.
Well,
because that's just what you do. It's always been there. That's how it is.
Yeah, and they don't take cash.
There's no service.
The self-checkout places, they'd say, we don't take cash here. Really? So now the government has total access to all of your banking at all times?
Well, I think we've talked about they already do, but you know. But for some people, it's comforting to feel like they don't. So let's talk a little bit more about the second component. We talked about the first one, which is that fewer young people working minimum wage laws can make it too expensive to hire them. We talked about kind of whether or not that's a thing. But what's the other reason that we're down to 37% from 60% back in 1978 of those 16 to 19-year-olds working? Keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back. Another cause for the workforce participation rate among 16 to 19-year-olds having dropped, another reason can be that labor laws that make it illegal to hire teenagers at any wage, a situation that a growing number of states are moving to change. And maybe it's not making it illegal to hire them, but maybe it's placing such restrictions on them that the way a business looks at it is it's not worth the hassle, right? I have to pay them minimum wage, okay. But now they can only work between these hours. They can only work this many hours. These are all things that somebody who's doing the scheduling or a program that's doing the scheduling has to account for in order to hire this person or not. I mean, we know there's a lot of businesses
But I think that's a crock because what was going on when back in the dark ages, as you so aptly put it, I was working as a teenager. That's when those laws were in place.
Did the newspaper company check to make sure that you weren't working too many hours?
No. I mean, that was my first job. Okay.
How old were you?
Well, my first job, I was 9, and I rode around on my bike and picked up pop bottles off the side of the highway.
The first one were an external, like the newspaper job.
The newspaper job, I was 13, 14 years old.
Okay, I was going to say, because, if you were under 14, you were probably breaking labor laws, and so was the company. But nobody cared because it was just, that was normal.
Don't even get into how paper boys were abused. That was the best. It taught you how to get yourself up. You had to run your own books.
I think it's
great.
You
had to do your own collecting. It was a job that most people should have. And we're missing the point here, okay? As the author states, whether or not it's down or not, what are the benefits? The benefits of teenagers working are huge. Just the very basic fact, if you want safer streets. Because there is evidence, as stated in the article, that in every major metropolitan city in the United States who have summer programs, they have seen the crime rate go down, and they've seen the felony rate go down at a higher rate than just misdemeanors. Why wouldn't you want this? And to the point, well, all these laws make it harder. I had to work under those laws, okay? If you were 14 or 15, you could only work this many hours a week because you had school. If you were 16 or 17, that was way back 50 years ago, and 63% of us were in the workforce. So that's a piece of BS. Instead of going to high school, going to college, never working, and then coming out and saying, well, it's not fair. I can't buy anything. I can't make... What, you didn't know how the system worked? No, I didn't know. Right, because we didn't show them. We failed them as adults. It's not their fault if they don't know, if we didn't teach them.
So how much of an effect does having people work at a younger age have on, for example, the crime rate? Well, an analysis of New York City's Summer Youth Employment Program, which is the nation's largest such program, concluded that participation decreases the chance that youth are arrested during the program's summer by 17%, and it decreases the chance that they are arrested for a felony during the program's summer by 23%. Those are pretty substantive
Exactly,
reductions.
right? That's what I was referring to. And it's not, and I'm sick and tired of people saying it's the younger generation's fault. No, it's not. It's the adults' fault. Youth today are the same as I was. Okay. Yes, maybe they have TikTok, they've got phone, but they're the same thing. If you don't teach them, if you don't give them guidance, and they're seeking it, believe it or not, they want somebody to hold them accountable. They want somebody to care about them. Yes. Okay. They're searching for that. And when they're out there doing all these bad things, that's because nobody's cared for them when they were little. Okay. And so we have failed them. Your job as a parent is not to be your child's best friend, but to teach them the things that they need to know. And the problem with young people today is parents didn't do that for them. Okay. So now they're apathetic towards work. They're apathetic towards society. They're apathetic towards money. They're apathetic towards the economy. Because why? Because they've just been allowed to learn everything through an app or through a phone. And so their brains are changing and working. We talked about that, and nobody's guided them or held them accountable. Once you do that, they get a really good understanding and they start to be more productive. And lo and behold, they tend to be happier with themselves.
And among other things, putting teenagers to work can go a long way toward increasing their earnings later in life. I think that one's huge. Keep in mind, right, that when you're out there competing in the workforce, as somebody that's hired a lot of different people, what are they doing? They're looking at a resume, right? So if you're an 18-year-old and you've been working since you're 14 and it's, well, I've worked here, I've worked here, I've worked here, I've done these 3 different jobs, I've made this type of different money, and I can call those previous employers and say, how did they do for you? Well, they worked hard and they didn't, they learned a lot. And versus this 18-year-old who has none of that and wants a job, which one am I hiring? I mean, if they're same in all respects except for work experience, well, I'm going to hire the one that was working since they were 14. I mean, why wouldn't I? Why would I hire the person that's never worked versus the one that has? Because it's far more likely that the person that's worked has learned to be dependable, punctual, has learned some professional courtesies, all things that I as an employer am not going to have to waste time teaching them as a new hire. And they may even be more valuable to me than somebody who's going after a college degree right now who also hasn't worked. We haven't talked about that either. As we've placed more priority on education, we've simultaneously said, well, the solution is they need more hours to study, so they're going to work less. In turn, many of those students who go into college haven't worked any jobs.
Right.
And then they get out into this professional world, and I can tell you, because Lance and I have interacted with a few of them who their manners, their decorum, all of these things, like, whoa, like you're still like a 17-year-old and you're 23, Why
do they feel entitled? They've never had to work for anything. We've made their life easier, but we've set them up to be anxious and not understand how to deal with failure.
Well, you've not been given those skills.
So we've done that, right. We've done them a disservice because we thought we were protecting them, but we didn't teach them how to deal with that.
Our protection actually hurt them? Is that what?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Gotcha. Okay. So the coddling.
And I'm not blaming the young people.
Right.
I'm blaming the adults.
Yeah.
Young people are the same today as they've always been. They're looking for guidance. They're looking for someone to help them through. They're looking for someone to teach them that things will be okay, that this isn't the first time some of this has happened. And as adults, we are failing them.
So Axios reported on current efforts in Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio, and other states to ease teenage work requirements. With the permission of a parent or legal guardian, 14-year-olds could work later into the evenings all year long, and 15-year-olds could be hired for positions currently off limits to anyone under 18. Last year, a Democratic governor in New Jersey signed bipartisan legislation that allows 16-year-olds to work up to 50 hours a week during summer break and 14-year-olds to work up to 40 hours a week when not in school. Last month in Arkansas, Republican Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders signed the Youth Hiring Act, which nixes the requirement that 14 and 15-year-olds get permission from the state to work. Quote, it's apparently not enough for Democrats to trap kids in failing schools. They also want to make it harder for teenagers to work part-time or summer jobs, end quote. That's Ms. Sanders wrote on Twitter after signing the bill. The part of the reason she may say that, interestingly, though, that both Democratic and Republican governors have signed legislation changing this is because big labor has had strong objections to this for a number of different reasons, to allowing younger people to work. Not the least of which one of those is we talk about all institutions have a desire to survive. We know that participation in unions tends to be the lowest among the lowest age workers. They tend to be less involved in unions. So if I'm a union and I end up with, 20% of my members who are now under the age of 30 and they don't ever participate, that hurts my remaining 80% of members. Well, if 95% of members participate, that's better. So it's not that they don't like young people. It's not necessarily that they don't think that young people should work. It's that, well, my job as a union, right? Just like we talk about political parties. Political parties aren't designed to serve the nation's interests. They're designed to serve their party's interests. That's what they're designed to do. That's why they exist. Unions should exist for the benefit of workers, but they're supposed to keep themselves alive. They're supposed to keep themselves strong. And you're not strong if your members don't participate. If your members don't show up and they don't do anything, what's the point in paying the union dues? Nothing, And young workers are more likely to opt out of unions too and not pay the dues if they have that option. So again, why would we want those people?
That's because we have not taught them the history of workers being taken advantage of.
So you could
in this nation.
So you could convince them that this is valuable.
Yes.
And that it gives them more power and authority.
Yes.
So big labor's desire to keep young people from working is misguided. Okay. That's kind of what I thought too, but now Governor Gavin Newsom, our friend out there in California, he says that you got to admit loosening child labor laws was not on my top 10 list for our California legislative session this year. He's right to note that California and Arkansas have different priorities. Last year, at the urging of labor unions, Mr. Newsom signed legislation that allows the cost of hiring a fast food worker to increase by an average of 41%.
And I think that's what needs to happen. I think you said it as well, because we've lost that relationship towards what it costs to eat out versus buying fresh food and fixing it at home and making it. And if we need to drive up prices because of that, so be it.
So how do we get more students? Kids between 16 and 19, only 37% in 2023 are participating in the labor force versus 60% a year ago. We say it's great. We say there's a lot of benefits. There's all these good things that happen. How does it affect education? And if we want more of them to do it, how do we get them to do it? Keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back. What about the effect on education? We're at a point right now, a notable point in history that breaks Lance's heart, where, interestingly enough, a majority of Americans don't think a college degree is worth the cost, according to a new Wall Street Journal poll, a new low in confidence for what has been a hallmark of the American dream.
It doesn't break my heart. Don't speak for me. I'm on the record and have told people my story, and that is I only went to college because
it worked for you.
No, the employer said I had to have a college degree to get the job I wanted to have. Mm-hmm. I was a high school graduate who was not going to college. Okay. I did not apply to colleges during my senior year. I had the ACT scores. I could get in almost anywhere I wanted to. I didn't want to go to college. But then when I went out into the workforce, I realized, okay, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. What I want to do is teach school. And the only way I could get hired to teach school was to get a college education. So I stand by my statements that college is great for people who need it to get the job they want. Unfortunately, in my young adult age, we had a change because people who were getting college degrees were making more money than other people. So we had politicians who stepped in and said, we need to make everybody go to college because everybody will make more money then. Well, what that did was increase the cost of college to the point now that there are some college degrees you get that you can't pay off the debt for what they make. And one of them is teaching. So no, it doesn't break my heart. People should go to college if that's what they need to do to get the job they want. Period. That's it.
Well, we did a whole show, right, on talking about the value of a college degree and that it varies hugely based on what degree you're getting. One of the reasons I don't like the article and I don't like the survey is I actually like the questions that they asked, but the fundamental nature of this is asking, is college worth it? Is a dumb question. Now, we all ask that question, right? I mean, we all think about, is going to college worth it? Okay, well, what college are you going to and what are you going for?
Well, and what's your experience? I was a non-traditional student at a regular college age. I lived at home and then I got married, which may be non-traditional, but I lived at home. I didn't live on the dorms. Okay. I saved money by going to a school close to home and living in my parents' basement, and just going to school for a year or two. Then I got married and then went back to school. But again, it wasn't your typical, I didn't have the typical college experience. So what's your motive and why are you going? I wanted to go as cheaply as possible to get out as soon as possible so I could join the workforce doing the job I wanted. Now, there are a lot of people that go to college because I'm going to find myself. Okay. I'm going to figure out who I am and what I want to do. Okay. Well, it's a pretty expensive thing to do that way.
Well, that's why it should be free for everybody.
At $50,000 a year. Right. And again, here's the point though, right?
I'm not saying I believe that, folks, just to be on the record.
I mean, if it is free, okay? I'm not, but then all of a sudden, how valuable is a college education?
Well, how many times have I talked about that?
It's to the point of a high school degree, right? High school degrees 100 years ago were very valuable because less than 20% of Americans went to high school. They quit school in 6th grade or 8th grade.
You mean a high school diploma was a big deal, right?
100 years ago, a high school diploma was a big deal and you could earn more money. But then, we're going to mandate, the government here, we're going to mandate that people stay in school and get a high school diploma.
Well, now everybody has one.
So by the 70s,
or not everybody,
I came along, 85, 95 to 90% of young people had a high school diploma. So when you went out to compete in the job market, it was no big deal if you had a high school diploma. Didn't mean anything. Didn't carry any weight. So we went to college. Okay. Well, now if everybody goes to college, then all of a sudden a college degree would carry the same weight as a high school degree did 50 years ago.
What happened to high school degrees, right, is there was a time where getting it was unusual, therefore it was worth more. But if you didn't have one, it wasn't really that big a deal because it's like, well, most people don't. Now most people have a high school diploma, right? The change then is that having one doesn't really gain you anything, but not having one does hurt you.
Will hurt you, right.
And what I think we're trying to get at is if we're not careful, we will cause the same thing to happen with college degrees. In some fields, it's already expected. The degree is expected. You must have this, doesn't matter what your experience is, really doesn't matter.
Not expected, it's required.
Required. And if you don't have this, it hurts you. But having it, is it helping you or is it just a prerequisite now versus a benefit?
Depends on the job, but they won't hire you to be a teacher without that degree. You might get a job at a business without it, but would it help your application if you've taken a few business courses or econ courses or marketing courses? Yes. Or if you have the degree, they may say, we want that person with the degree. So again, it depends on the work that you're seeking.
So listen to the question they asked. They said, when it comes to getting a 4-year college degree, which of the following statements comes closer to your point of view? A 4-year college education is worth the cost because people have a better chance to get a good job and earn more income over their lifetime. Or a 4-year college education is not worth the cost because people often graduate without specific job skills and with a large amount of debt to pay off. Now, In 2013, 53% of people said it was worth the cost because they'd have a better chance to get a good job and earn more income over their lifetime, where only 40% said it was not worth the cost because people often graduate without specific job skills and with a large amount of debt to pay off. In 2023, it's 42% saying that it's worth the cost versus 56% saying it's not worth the cost because people often graduate without specific job skills and with a large amount of debt to pay off. The point that I want to make about this is it's really not about college. It's what has changed over that time. Why would this have changed? Well, the participation rate among 16 to 19-year-olds has gone down in the labor force. Less of them are working than they were when this was first done, which I believe, right, here's a believe thing, correlates to knowing less about what they want to do when they go to college. So if there's more students going to college for the purpose of, as Lance said, finding themselves, and less going for the reason that Lance which was to get this degree to do this job, why are we surprised that we have more college graduates and less of them know what they want to do, and they have more debt and they end up in a job that doesn't fit their degree? Well, why would we not want to get young people working sooner and even encourage them? We've talked about national service ideas before. Encourage them at 17, 18, 19, 20 years old to go explore different jobs and make it easier to do that too. Internships, you shouldn't have to be in college as a prerequisite to get an internship. That is stupid. And I hate every time that I see a company that, well, if you're going to this college, then you can get an. No, the whole point of an internship ought to be to figure out if this is something that you want to do so that you can figure out if you should go to college for this thing.
But I'm going back because this is my parent issue today, all right? Back in the day, right, with the people that I was parenting with, as far as my contemporaries, not just my wife,
right. Your peers,
but the rest of us, when our children were in high school, maybe they were busy during school, but in the summer, we'd make them get a job to learn all that work. But also, do you like that job? And I know many people who worked in a factory who, when their kids got done with high school and their first or second year of college, they got them a job working the line at the factory. And their kids said, oh my God, I'm going back to school because I don't want to do this. To your point, and I remember one gentleman who I respect an awful lot, his daughter said with an internship, oh, I hated it. He goes, you just learned something. You learned something even if you didn't like it, because you learned what you don't like, the type of people you don't want to work with, or maybe a part of the country that you don't want to live in. So every opportunity that you get to experience something different, whether it's a positive or negative experience, is a growth opportunity for you as a human being.
You probably gained a good bit of empathy too, because say we work with a lot of young people and we have a number of them that work in construction. We know that not all of them are going to stay in construction their whole life, right?
Right.
I mean, they're just not going to do that. Some of them, it's not the thing for them. Okay, but they've learned that.
But for many of them, it's the first job they've ever had.
Right. If they learn that, and then someday they run into somebody who does work in construction as a career and has been doing it for 40 years, they're probably a lot more likely to be kind to that person because it's like, yeah, I know what that's like because I did that thing and I don't want to do that thing, you know? So, and that's any career, right? I mean, if you gain like fast food, I've met a lot. I do not want to work in the service industry. You know, some people love it. Most people don't. But what? If you've spent time working in a fast food restaurant or any restaurant and you go out to eat, I mean, I can't tell you how many times this has happened with me and Brett when we go out someplace. We are more patient and more kind to the people working in the restaurant because we've worked in a restaurant,
right,
and we know what it's like. And that's the reason that working in different jobs is beneficial. And the best time to do it, right, is when you're young. And then you can figure out what you want to do. And then if you need to go to college, key there, need, then you can, and it will probably be worth your return. Because remember, when Lance and I did that show, you guys go back and listen to this one about the value of a college degree today. And we said, is it worth it? It depends. And one of the biggest things we found was degrees with specific career paths and people who started college and finished college with the same degree in mind were much more likely to see a return on their investment in their life on their degree. Those who weren't sure, less likely to see a return on their degree and more likely to work in a field where they don't use their degree. We've decided that using college to find yourself is going to be the replacement in a lot of ways for working at a younger age. Why? The data tells us that working at a younger age, when done appropriately, right? When done in a way that's equitable and fair, is very beneficial to kids. It lowers the crime rate, decreases what we have to pay to our police and law enforcement. It improves their likelihood to enter the workforce in stable careers and with good skills. And it can probably make college more valuable again. Sounds like a pretty good thing.
I don't disagree.
I would also share with people thinking about we don't have time to talk about it today, but I wrote it down, Lance, and I just had to mention it. Lance and I fought a universal minimum wage for so long. Stupid, right? What you need to make in Urbana, Ohio versus what you need to make in downtown LA are not the same things. You don't like inflation out of control? One of the reasons it's out of control is because we're fighting over minimum wage crap because we're trying to fix a problem that's based on geography with a blanket solution. That usually doesn't work very well. We've talked about lots of fixes to that. The other thing I want to mention is if we're willing to do that, Lance, minimum wage based on geography, why aren't we okay with a tiered minimum wage? If we're so worried, if the biggest objection to folks is that we don't want to disqualify older workers from working some of those jobs, why don't we approach a tiered minimum wage? If you have housing, if you're a young person, and you're in school, do you need to make a wage that affords you your own apartment? No. You could raise. Okay,
you can't bring that up because
I know you got all kinds of things.
There's a whole list of problems with it. Stop with the first one you said. Have geographical minimum wage. That other one
Lance
is full of holes.
I can't let you.
No,
I can't let you.
You can't make that as a statement. No.
Well, that's why I wait. See, people who listen know this. You wait till the end, and then you throw this little thing in there, and then Lance is just shaking his head. And
no, that's
you could also raise wages though for people who do have to support a living standard, because we talked about the minimum wage doesn't meet a living standard anyway.
No, you can't do that.
Well, you could.
Well, you
whether
can.
Or not it's smart.
Then you're going to cause more problems, and I can tell you why on the next episode.
Why do we have the show?
But we had the show because it was time for Justin to be quiet so we could finish.
Oh, okay.
And he had to yank up my blood pressure.
Well, but why don't you have a good day?
That's not the mission here at True Chat. The mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And hopefully we've done that today. I think we have. And if you've enjoyed today's show and you're sharing it with coworkers or with family members, and they say, well, I trust you and I think you're giving me the straight poop on this, but I want to listen to it myself. Well, tell them they can find us as a podcast on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
If you want to listen to new episodes of The State of Us, they're released Tuesdays and Thursdays as a podcast. First thing in the mornings, those same episodes heard on AM and FM talk radio stations across the United States and parts of Canada. For The State of Us, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to producer Bradley Butch. Thank you, our audience, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.